sometimes, if not every time, the only way to find out a thing is to go do it. Put it out there and don't be afraid to fail. Or if you're gonna be afraid to fail, cool, just don't be afraid to try the next thing on your list and keep trying. Hi, my name's Tom Levine. I'm an award-winning hybrid author with 9 novels originally out with imprints of places like Random House and Simon & Schuster, and I've also done some work on my own imprint, which is a lot of fun. And today we're continuing our discussion of Stephen King's Danse Macabre, which came out in, I believe, 1981. Before I begin today, though, I want to briefly touch on something that just happened in the last couple days here. The other day, this is Sunday, so I think it was Thursday or Friday, I got an email from a small literary magazine who said they were accepting an essay that I wrote for publication in their next issue, which is really cool. The first thing I want to say about that is getting an acceptance letter never gets old. It never stops being awesome. Random House, Simon & Schuster, Spawn, whatever. Cool, man. It doesn't matter. I still love getting those, so I would be surprised to learn if there were any authors out there who didn't feel the same way. So just wanted to share that. That's a cool thing that happened, and I'm very excited about it. I'm very happy about it, and I can't wait to see it in print. The other thing about that, though, is that I posted a very brief message about it on my Facebook author page, which you can find at facebook.com/author Tom Levine, all one word. And the response was not only immediate, but overwhelming. I got engagements from that post, and it was just a text post, no images, no reels, no anything, just a really short note saying, hey, I got this piece into this magazine, and it's really cool. And that post lit up with people saying congratulations. Not only does that just feel good, because it does. The algorithm of Facebook and of other social media has trained us to get that dopamine hit. I believe it's dopamine. Very much like people get when they're playing slot machines. Make no mistake, this is a science that places like Facebook have perfected. But that doesn't mean it doesn't still feel good. It felt really good to not only get the acceptance, but then to post about it and get so much outpouring of support from my friends and fans. So the next thing I wanted to say about that is just thank you to everybody who took the time to click, who took the time to say congrats on a comment. That was really great. And believe it or not, although I think those of you listening today will believe me, believe it or not, those little gestures make all the difference. A congratulations or a heart or a like or a share, any of those kinds of things that you leave on the pages of people you like or follow or admire or enjoy or whatever, it makes a big difference. It really does. Now, obviously, as a creator, I can go too far with that and stake all of my value and worth as a human being on those reactions. That's a bad idea. I do not recommend doing that. That being said, seeing them, seeing the appreciation, seeing the gratitude, seeing the congratulations can really help a creator like myself get through another day or another week or another month. Just knowing that you're out there, knowing that you're listening, knowing that you care, that you're invested, even if it only took literally 1 second of your day to tap or click the like icon, it still matters and it still counts a lot. So I want to say thank you to everybody who did that because you are part of the process and I appreciate that. Okay, with all that being said, let's head over to Stephen King's Danse Macabre. We are not even into numbered pages yet. We're close though. We're close. Page 1 of this book actually begins on page 15. Right now we are still in the forenote. Just about through it, but we still have some paragraphs to go. Maybe I'll get through it today. I don't know. But let's pick up right where we left off with King talking about teaching a course called Themes in Supernatural Literature. As for my Themes in Supernatural Literature course, on that November night, Bill called. Bill was his editor at the time. Bill called. I was sitting at the kitchen table with a beer, trying to dope out a syllabus for it, and musing aloud to my wife that I was shortly going to be spending a lot of time in front of people talking about a subject in which I had previously only felt my way instinctively like a blind man. Although many of the books and films discussed in the pages which follow are now taught routinely in colleges, I read the books, saw the films, and formed my conclusions pretty much on my own, with no texts or scholarly papers of any type to guide my thoughts. It seemed that very shortly I would get to see the true color of my thoughts for the first time. That kind of makes me think about, and I got to be very careful here, makes me think about education, formal education in creative writing. As King says, and I think he probably says it in Danse Macabre, searching for the gems. Being a horror film fan in any era really is like just sifting through the dirt, and you're just looking for that little sparkle, that little piece of gold fleck amidst all the detritus that is so, so bad. And here, and frequently, I will reference the website Tubi, tubi.tv, I believe, which is where I get most of my horror these days. And most of it, maybe not most, a lot of it is dreck. A lot of it is so bad and near unwatchable. Some of it is literally unwatchable. Like, you can't even sit down to watch the thing. But it's fun. It's a lot of fun. And the search for that gem that pops out is part of the fun. I'll give you an example. I was just rewatching this the other day. There's a movie called Heidi. And it actually, God, it was so long ago now. It's more than 10 years old now, I think. And it's a found footage film, amateur production company, to the best of my knowledge, filmed everything on an iPhone kind of thing, which is exactly what I would have done, about a haunted doll. And like, how many times has this been done? A bazillion and one. So many times that I'm on the verge of writing a book about it. But man, that movie scared the crap out of me. That was a great, great possessed doll movie. They just did some really great creative work with the doll and their camera angles and everything that really made it work for me. So I loved it, and it was totally worth the 10 or 20 awful movies I had to get through to find that one. So that's part of the fun of being kind of a horror film watcher, viewer, fan, is to look for these things. And when you find one, then you go out and tell everybody about it, and you become an evangelist for it. But when it comes to the formalized education of fiction, or of horror more specifically, there are some great nonfiction books about this, and I may very well just, after I'm done with Danse Macabre in about 30 years from now, move on to one of those other ones. There's some great works on monsters and on horror films and horror literature. There's some great people, I've mentioned her many times, like Mother Horror on Substack and on Instagram, who have made a career of reading and studying and commenting on horror literature, for example. Do you need to pay money to take a formalized class in writing or in horror or whatever your genre happens to be? The short answer is no, you don't. I didn't until I was, I'd written a couple of books, not published, but written a couple of books by the time I was 19 or 20 and taking my first creative writing class, which I got a lot out of. Could have gotten more, though, which is a topic for another time. So is it possible to learn this stuff without formal education? Of course it is. Yes, particularly with the internet, which I did not have when I was coming up. It's absolutely possible. The advantage to a formalized education is it's going to cut down your time in the learning curve. That's the value of it. When you come to a conference or convention or a class that I am teaching and you've paid money for, I am giving you an hour of my time in exchange for whatever fee it was that you paid for, right, to get into the class. But I'm probably saving you at minimum a year in your own studies, sometimes 2, sometimes 5, sometimes with the right group of people and asking the right questions, I'll save you 10 years of work. I'm not even exaggerating. A good teacher in any, genre or art or whatever is worth the investment if they're going to save time off of your learning curve. And so for that reason, I would say yes. Do you need to do a lot of research before you put down money for a course of some kind? Absolutely. But can it be worth it? Yes. Can you meet other people like yourself and form incredible, long-lasting relationships based around a shared interest? Yes. That alone might be worth the price of admission. So I have other thoughts on that topic, but we'll let that go as we try to work through the book. It seemed that very shortly I would get to see the true color of my thoughts for the first time. That may seem a strange phrase. Further along in this book, I have written my belief that no one is exactly sure of what they mean on any given subject until they have written their thoughts down. I tend to agree with that. I like that idea. I similarly believe that we have very little understanding of what we have thought until we have submitted those thoughts to others, who are at least as intelligent as ourselves. So yeah, I was nervous about the prospect of stepping into that Barrows Hall classroom, and I spent too much of an otherwise lovely vacation in St. Thomas that year agonizing over Stoker's use of humor in Dracula and the paranoia quotient of Jack Finney's Body Snatchers. Being well-read, I think, is still very important, and it's never too late to be well-read in your genre. Turning back to the book. In the days following Bill's call, I began to think more and more that if my series of talks, I don't quite have the balls enough to call them lectures, on the horror, supernatural, gothic field seemed well received by myself as well as by my students, then perhaps writing a book on the subject would complete the circle. Finally, I called Bill and told him I would try to write the book, and as you can see, I did. No, Stephen King is so good at humor. We don't think of him as a humorist in the way that we might think of his friend Dave Barry as a humorist, but he's really freaking funny sometimes. And his way of addressing the reader can be really amusing, I think. Back to the book. All this is by way of acknowledging Bill Thompson, who created the concept of this book. The idea was and is a good one. If you like the book which follows, thank Bill, who thought it up. If you don't, blame the author, who screwed it up. Cool. I still think I would love to see an updated version of Danse Macabre. Wouldn't that be awesome? Because so much has happened in the intervening decades. It would just be killer. No pun intended. It is also an acknowledgement of those 100 EH90 students who listened patiently and sometimes forgivingly as I worked out my ideas. As a result of that class, many of these ideas cannot even be said to be my own, for they were modified during class discussions, challenged, and, in many cases, changed. Well, that goes without saying that being malleable, maybe malleable is the wrong word, being open-minded, that's a much better term. It is crucial for artists and writers to be open-minded, not marrying our opinions. We can have long-term relationships with them, but I don't know that it's a great idea to marry our opinions. I have learned so much recently from people who have not published as much as I have, who do not have as much experience as I have, who have not made as much money as I have, but they knew their shit. And so I absolutely listen to them and incorporate what they had to say because they were smarter than me and they were right about some stuff. And so you have to stay open-minded about these things and not get locked in to this is the way you do things and you just stick with it and never ever change. I just don't think that's a smart idea in life or in writing. During that class, an English professor at the University of Maine, Burton Hatlin, came in to lecture one day on Stoker's Dracula, and you will find that his insightful thoughts on horror as a potent part of a myth pool in which we all bathe communal... Wow, Stephen. That is a hell of a sentence. It's a good sentence, but Jesus. Okay, let's try that again. During that class, an English professor at the University of Maine, Burton Hatlin, came in to lecture one day on Stoker's Dracula, and you will find that his insightful thoughts on horror as a potent part of a myth pool in which we all bathe communally also form a part of this book's spine. So, thanks, Bert. I'm going to take a second here and point out something about that paragraph. One is this incredibly long sentence, and you heard how difficult it was for me to even say it out loud. It reads fine. It reads better than I read it out loud, but it's a long-ass sentence. And then he finishes the paragraph with, so thanks, Bert. This is a 2-sentence paragraph, but it's broken up really well. 2 of those long sentences together would have been way too much, but he gives you this long, sort of not quite meandering sentence and then clips it with a 3-word sentence to wrap it up. I like that. I think it's probably something that you'll find in my work because I've been so influenced by King. But the idea of not letting all of your sentences be the same length and the same number of words, and this, you can put somebody to sleep by doing that. Even if the language itself is flowery or poetic or lyrical or what have you, you gotta break up those paragraphs a little bit. Okay, moving on. My agent, Kirby McCauley, a fantasy horror fan and unregenerate Minnesotan, also deserves thanks for reading this manuscript, pointing out errors of fact, arguing conclusions, and most of all, for sitting up with me one fine drunk night at the UN Plaza Hotel in New York and helping me to make up the list of recommended horror films during the years 1950 to 1980, which forms Appendix 1 of this book. I owe Kirby more than that, much more, but for now, that will have to do. We are almost finished with the forenote, but I'm going to stop there for the day. We should be able to get through the next part pretty quickly, but I've thought that before. I don't know. Remember that Danse Macabre is very much a precursor to On Writing, which I also recommend for pretty much any aspiring or apprentice author. There's a lot in the book On Writing you can dismiss, but do not dismiss it out of hand. Read it, let it sink in, try the things he talks about, and see if it works for you, which is going to be true of any book on writing or anything that I say for that matter. There is no one arbiter of what is good writing, what is art, what is good fiction, what is marketable, what isn't. The thing I think we'll close with today is the thing that I'm trying to remind myself of more and more these last few months as I work on my business, and that is that sometimes, if not every time, the only way to find out a thing is to go do it. Put it out there and don't be afraid to fail. Or if you're going to be afraid to fail, cool, just don't be afraid to try the next thing on your list and keep trying. Something's going to land. There are, however many billions of people on planet Earth, you only need a couple thousand of them to say, hey, I like what you do. Odds are in your favor that there's a few thousand people out there who will like what you do. You need to get your stuff in front of them. How you do that, when you do that, why you do that, the format in which you do that, those things are all up for discussion, and I'm happy to help you work through those sometime. But the important factor is getting them out. Get them out the door. So, hope this episode was helpful for you. Hope you're enjoying Danse Macabre. I usually try to leave some links in the comments or somewhere nearby where you can pick up copies of the stuff that I mentioned. Also, I do not list books that I don't believe in or that I have not read and stand by myself. Or if I read them and hated them, I'll tell you that too. But yeah, I don't include references to resources that I don't think were good. I only include stuff that I believe in personally, so bear that in mind. Anyway, hope to see you again next week, and hope this has been helpful for you. Take care and keep writing.